Very good morning and welcome back from the US. I heard you were out recently. I know your business.
Good morning. Yes, I was out and I did have a number of engagements apart from attending a private function.
Broadly, how did they go?
The engagements were very well. A lot of it was focused on engaging the Indian community in the United States, Guyanese, of course. And we did have a good bit of engagements, and we promised to do some work moving forward.
Excellent, excellent. Welcome back, as I said. A number of things have been happening locally. You were successfully re-elected. How have you been settling into your second term as leader of the PNCR, People's National Congress?
Well, I can say I had some rest because I have been at it all the time. Now we have a new executive. We meet on Wednesday, and I'm going to, at that meeting, engage them on a number of issues which we will discuss and arrive at some positions on. We have to name a general secretary, though it's exclusively within the realm of the leader. I've been engaging people, and I think by Wednesday CEC, I would have identified the next general secretary of the party.
Excellent. Is the public going to be happy?
If the public is going to what?
Is the public going to be happy?
Well, I would think they should be happy. The person that is under consideration is a competent person. But I still have a few more engagements before I actually say that this is the person, this is how we move forward.
Excellent. As you start this second term, you've said you've already had some engagement in the diaspora. What are you thinking of locally? And I want to pick your brain on a couple very serious issues developing.
I want to start a significant focus on the youth. The Congress had decided that we should have our youth conference by October. And we will work assiduously to ensure that we get that youth conference off. We have been working with the youth across the country, engaging them. We're now going to just bring them together, provide them with the GYSM constitution, which some of them have, and to begin to work in a structured way with the youth of the party and the youth of the country, because the youth is critical to the next election.
Excellent. And let's talk about some of what's happening currently. Some of it very, very corrupt, seemingly untenable as it were. Let's start with these very strong allegations that were brought against a very senior policeman recently, Mr. Brutus. They said he was trying to make a huge deposit into the police credit union, $15+ million, and the 1.5 million as interest. You're hearing a senior policeman owns multiple buildings, apartment buildings, and all of that. Is this a government that's taking corruption seriously? What are your thoughts here?
If you go back to what I was saying from the time I became opposition leader, if you do not have a proper police commissioner who is qualified and can do the work, and whose integrity is not in question, then we're going to have problems. Now, before that, you had Vice President Jack Dale being accused of fraud, of bribery and corruption, without the police investigating. The very fact that the police refused to investigate it underscores the reality that the police would be guided by their activities, and so the police now know that they have to protect the political directorate so they can do it and escape. Unfortunately for them, low ranks in the Ghana police force, they were putting the information out there, so they became exposed. Now the reality is, this governing of this country is done in a corrupt way. The allocation of contracts is by, in large measure, corruption. You have corrupted the head, the body will go. And so I've been saying for the longest while that I will never agree to the appointment of the present acting police commissioner, because he doesn't suit the job. And it has nothing to do with anything personal. The very PPP had outlined the qualifications for a commissioner. politicization of the police force has placed it where it is. If you politicize the police force now knows that they don't have to be accountable to the commissioner. You hear some of them talking about going directly to the president, some going to the vice president. So almost immediately you remove the line of command and create multiple points of power that policemen can access, and in the process you undermine the structure of the police. With an undermined structure, senior policemen believe they can become involved in illegalities and get away with it because they have to protect persons. Let us not forget they would have had to get an instruction to deal with the allegations of rape against
Mr. Darmlal.
Minister Darmlal at the time. And that would have meant that policemen know, they are aware that there is political intervention and that they did a favor to the government. So they now see themselves as the government having favors for them. And that kind of create the conditions for the level of corruption you're seeing, not only at the police, but look what is happening in Goal and the GGMC. Look what has happened.
I'm coming there. Coming to GGMC.
So
Vikram.
Once you politicize the structures that should be independent, once you remove the line of command, you are creating conditions propitious to the high levels of corruption we've seen here.
What do you think of what the Minister of Home Affairs, Robson Ben, said about investigation into the very issues concerning Mr. Brutus, who was going to be doing the investigation?
Well, in a statement we made it very clear. You can't charge Caesar to be tried by Caesar. The police has already established that they lack credibility, more so at the top. Now, you rather than send Brutus home, you claim that he is asked to be sent on leave. That in itself tells you that he continues to be who he is on leave, and therefore there is scope for him to interfere with junior ranks. We have said in a press statement, this demands a reputable international institution such as the FBI or the authorities in Canada or some country in which their law enforcement architecture is intact. You cannot allow the police to investigate the police. It makes no sense. You need a reputable investigator, and then there's the accounts part of it, in which you might need a forensic accountant to go through, etc. So it has transcended the police force. And the police force, by its very action, would have made themselves not a candidate. It is only the blind will not see that the police cannot investigate the police. It has to be done by a reputable institution. Let us not forget, we wrote the Commissioner of Police when they were when there was electoral fraud in the local government election. He refused to act. Clearly, he acted to protect the PPP and their operatives. And now it is their turn to protect them. And if we're going to get anywhere with an investigation, it has to be a reputable international body undertaking the investigation. Excellent.
The U.S. Treasury issued a number of sanctions recently to what they call gold smuggling, among other things. Metusan Thomas is one of the ministers, permanent secretaries, said received gifts and all of that for lucrative contracts. The Mohammeds were caught up in that, Vikram Bharat is the head of that ministry that has oversight for the gold board and gold exports and so on. Allegations are already that he was recently detained by U.S. federal agents, escorted off a flight to New York, questioned. He is adamant that while he did talk to these federal agents, it was concerning the development of Guyana. He's actually suing veteran journalist Enrico Wolford on that front. What are your thoughts about these developments?
Well, I think he's grandstanding. I think he knows full well that he was pulled in, and that Enrico is a reputable journalist who, over the years, was not into sensationalism. He does his research, he does his work, and when he would have put that out there, it would have been after he would have accumulated all the facts and put it out there. Now, the government must of necessity try to say something, but even in what they're saying, there are loopholes. I think I saw one Robin Singh wrote a letter that didn't make much sense, because here is a minister, goes to the United States. There seems to be a confusion as to, they said he was there on his personal matters. Of course, he was using a diplomatic passport. I do not believe that the United States government just acted on one day. If you follow how the US agencies work, they tend to, over a prolonged period. And we were hearing whispers here that they were on to what was happening in terms of the gold industry. And you know, continuously the Mohammeds were saying they were innocent, etc.
Yeah.
Now, I believe that they were doing their work. They have information at their disposal. It is now the task of the government to say to the United States government, look, you are operating now at the level of allegation. Provide us with the evidence. If there's no evidence forthcoming, then I can see them saying, oh, well then we're not going to sanction anybody. But if they ask for the evidence and they get the evidence, then they will be obligated to operate in a particular way. Look, some people will comment on the interference in internal affairs. I do believe that countries should have their sovereign rights. But if you sign on to a convention on corruption, then you have obligations in this world. And if there's the contention that there is corruption in high places and governments are acting, let us not forget these are governments we are asking for loans and assistance from. We were just asking for money for the Gasto Shore project, which I understand was not approved. But even as we talk about sovereignty, we also have got to talk about our international obligation. And it is very critical at this stage that we support any fight against corruption. Corruption has been in this world one of the things that made many developing countries end up with the resource curse. And we believe that everything should be done to reduce and ultimately eradicate corruption. Because if you have weak institutions like we have, and money going around like it is going around, there is supposed to be an investment committee that is managing an investment that is innocuous. It is not allowed to do what it has to do. So you have an open playing field for corruption. And I believe both at the national and international level, corruption has got to be handled. Corruption is one of the causes of poverty in societies, because when the elite is corrupt, they carry away millions, billions of dollars in this case, and the people don't benefit. If you look at this government virtually doubling the infrastructure budget, I made a point in my Congress presentation that it is unacceptable for you to be doubling the budget. We believe there is need for infrastructure work, but you double the budget, you lack the capacity to implement a lot of these projects, then it is clear you are using it as a means of corruption. And once it is being used as a means of corruption, you are virtually reducing your ability to deliver to the people of Guyana and take them out of poverty. And so we have got to pay careful attention to corruption and support anti-corruption measures, because corruption is key and can lead to our people not benefiting in the way they should benefit. As we are seeing, we are talking about the fastest growing economy in the world, but poverty is on the increase. Child malnutrition is on the increase. And so we have to take it in the broader context of the fight against corruption, both at home and abroad. Corruption is an epidemic that is not good for a small country like Guyana, particularly as it is now obtaining resources from oil, and it has always been a country that had the potential. Now we can realize our potential, but corruption and poor governance stand in the way of us realizing our potential, and that is a cause for concern.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. One of the interesting things as you're on the economic front is the fact that we agreed to the government to pass that measure that I think it was a $6 or $7 billion for the cost of living measures. I don't think they have tapped into that as yet, and that was since February. We part of that. Clearly, don't have an interest.
Well, what they do, the PPP is a propagandist party, and so at budget time, $6 billion for cost of living, and it resonates well. And they know unless we point it out, the average man would not recognize that it isn't distributed. And then they're going to bring it to the end of the year. What that means is that they budgeted to give it during the year. They don't. They bring it to the end of the year. And then by the time they give it to the end of the year, inflation would have eaten it up. The high cost of living would eat it up. And then they come again next year in the budget and say $10 billion for cost of living. But it is not being utilized in a way that it impacts the cost of living. I do not believe this government wants to impact the cost of living. This government's strategy is a strategy to keep people in poverty and dependent and make them vulnerable. So when election comes, they will seek to bribe them, make offers. I anticipate they're going to increase old age pension. By the time they're ready to do it, people will need 150,000. And my understanding is that they're going to come with 100,000. But by the time they are ready, people are going to need 150,000 a pensioner. So in my Congress presentation, I made it clear, we will seek to bring pensioners to the level of a livable income. It is unacceptable for us to be an oil-rich country. We have people who are pensioners punishing while money is wasted on infrastructure. I come down this new road in Prashad Nagar, and they're building a second one on the inside that makes no sense. When you look at it, all you see is corruption. Why is there a need for that road? And then it runs in to a bottleneck.
Yeah.
So you see that these things are for corruption. If you go to the side of Campbellville Government School, if you go to the side of Campbellville Secondary School, you will see they put a
walkway or something, there. That leads nowhere.
and people don't walk there. Yeah. For one, it is insecure at night, and in the day, people don't use it. So when it is going to be used, you see clearly it's an approach to put money in the hands of the PPP family, friends, and favorites, rather than delivering to the people a better quality life. And so corruption is part of the modus operandi and bibindi of the PPP. They have now arrived at a place where they cannot operate without corruption money.
Yeah. I want to circle back to some of the discussion we were having about the Minister of Natural Resources, Vikram Bharat, and this latest scandal that he's in. We know for a fact that a number of contractors associated with this government have had their visas revoked. And some of what the government is responding to this situation with seems eerily familiar, because we've had the May Tucson Thomas experience where they've said it was just a normal stop and questioning as these TSA persons are wont to do sporadically. And then we know now, months later, that the US were investigating May Tucson through a number of departments, as you clearly mentioned early on. And one wonders is this is not the same movie we're seeing all over again. It's a normal stop, it's a normal escorting. We saw the video emerged with agents escorting Mr. Barrett. And all of that, and we're hearing the same themes again. This is normal. People are escorted all the time, and so on and so on, and such and so. Even in the private capacities. Interestingly, too, May Thomas had just gotten into the central executive of the PPP, and also she was on a private trip too to China on a diplomatic passport. Interestingly,
You have a corrupt government in power. I do not believe that the underlings, for the want of a better word, in the PPP will act without knowing what the leadership of the PPP is doing. We are well aware of the allegation against Barra Jack there. We saw Irfan Ali trying to distance himself from using Mohammed's vehicle, and the evidence emerged that he did in fact use the vehicle. I believe that, like I said in the Congress, Ghana's in crisis. It's in a governance crisis. Corruption is eating away the society. Now, the PPP, of necessity, will seek to explain away these actions. But the explanations cannot stand scrutiny. Why is it that so many senior government officials are under scrutiny by the United States government? Clearly, one of the things we must note is that while we were in government, we had permitted the DEA to come here, something that the PPP refused, which would have meant that they have other persons here scrutinizing. The diplomatic community here is engaging and will know what is happening. And so I think clearly the government is seriously involved in corrupt activities, and what in essence you're seeing is a clampdown on them, and they're trying to browbeat the Guyanese people that these things are routine. When the next one occur, they will say it is routine. When the following one occur, they will say it is routine. But the average Guyanese is sensible. The average Guyanese will know that they go through the airport. If they're involved in any illegality, nobody don't come and escort them anyway. If there's a little suspicion, they can carry them in the room and they can question them and either let it go. But when it arrives at such a high level, it cannot be accident and the normal escorting. It has to be part of that wider investigation that is seeking to unravel the corruption gang in Guyana and help Guyana to return to some form of decent, good governance. That will do us the good favor of ensuring our resources go to the people where it should go. So all of this noise about being escorted, etc., clearly the government is on the investigation. Senior officials in the government are on the investigation. We have to watch and see where it goes. We must apply our own political pressure of exposing them, etc., at the local level. The government likes to tell us, bring the evidence. I anticipated that it would have been shouting to the US, bring the evidence.
Yeah.
But they seem not to be doing that.
Let us then conclude where we started. You talked there about good governance, and that's one of the things that underpin our administration. I think it was in late 2021, the then U.S. Ambassador Sarah Lynch was advising the government to pursue anti-corruption measures, the PPP government. And it was quite interesting, because the only thing she could have pointed to was the years that the APNU AFC were in government of recent, and several anti-corruption measures that were tabled, that were enacted into law, and she was advising the PPP to go in that direction. I see now they're trying with some kind of a symposium, something of that nature, but nothing strong, nothing that is in the system, that is that no laws, nothing that is ratified. They're not even trying to go by the simple code of conduct that we left them, that was gazetted there already. I'm saying all of this to say, you talked about things unraveling. Did you get a sense when they started in government, install, or however you want to term it, that so much would have unraveled so soon? Even with the advent of oil and gas, people are still suffering. The cost of living is high. The non-oil sector's suffering. Did you expect that so soon?
Yes, I did. In fact, when I became leader of the opposition and I started engaging the international community, I was pointing them to the same things we saw around 2013, 2014 re-emerging. And we start by seeing a little drug bars here, and then we start seeing executions, all the things that tend to suggest that the underworld is being linked with the government. You know, I believe that when political power is linked to the underworld and gangsters, the system that emerged resembles gangsterism. And I think what you have is a large amount of gangsterism occurring in the society, because a lot of the persons who are key actors in government and in the criminal world are meeting, engaging, and developing deals. I had anticipated, and I recall saying to the international community when I would have met them, that they have made no tangible change. What they did is come with a phrase called One Guyana, and then they continue to do the same things that they did before. It wasn't very long that you're in government that I remember, I think it was Ganesh, exposing Dharamlal for being involved in shady contract allocation.
Correct.
And it continued. Now, you cannot expect the PPP to deal with corruption. It is like shooting themselves in the head. I ain't telling you, foot in the head. For the PPP to tangle corruption is really to tangle with itself. You do not ask people to fight their self-interest. You who believe in the interests of the people have got to help to fight that self-interest of the PPP. No one can expect the PPP as a government to bring laws to deal with corruption. Every law you see the PPP brings is aimed at total control and domination, because they also believe as we become involved in these illegalities, we have to dominate all and control all the institutions in the government so that nobody dares to expose them. Unfortunately, in the case with the police consumers co-op, they were exposed, and the information was coming out, and though Brutus allegedly transferred somebody to another place, it was too late. The information was already out there, etc. And this is something I want to point people to. People have got to learn to see struggle in its various forms. Right now, government institutions are struggling against the government, and they're doing it by silently providing information. They're doing it in a number of ways that we must pay attention to, and do not believe that because they are putting these laws for domination control in place, they are succeeding. They aren't. What they are doing is pushing people towards a form of passive resistance, which will result in the crumbling of the government. And so, again, I've been saying that we have to look at political struggle in its various forms. We have got to continue to increase the confidence in people believing that they can say to us, they can say to journalists, they can say to people in the diaspora, look, this is what is happening. Now, the government also, by trying to exercise total control here, another form of struggle that is emerging is that people in the system, they are giving the information to persons outside of the country so that there is exposure. And in politics, exposure has consequences. So we have to look at what is emerging here in its general context. You have the official struggles of the opposition, etc. You have the passive resistance in the public service. And it is interesting what happened in the police. It says to you that the policemen are dissatisfied and they are choosing their options to get the information out. I think it is going to happen in all institutions, because as you build a totalitarian society in which you seek to control the total life of people and to use your authority as an authoritarian state to do that, people find new means of struggling against you and exposing you and ultimately getting rid of you.
Yeah. As we wrap up, you talked about this crisis that we are in. What are your thoughts to the nation as we begin to enter into this national election period here more fully? What are your thoughts to this country?
The main thing that should be made here is that the people have an opportunity to compare between 2015 and 2020 and 2020 and now. And what they will see is that we delivered on water, on electricity, on income without oil. And now with the PPP with oil, they are not benefiting. Their poverty is increasing. The cost of living is going up around them. The trade unions are being destroyed and cannot represent them in the way they should. And so, in large measure, our message has to be, we are people-centered. We believe that the development of this country is hinged on our human resource development. We will put considerable resources into developing the human resource, while at the same time delivering on infrastructure, on water, on health, on education, in a way that it will redound to the benefit of the people of Guyana. And to say to the people of Guyana, right now, we are promising you prosperity for all, and not just for the PPP families, friends, and their elite.
Thank you very much for this time, Mr. Norton. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.